What's up, Sales Hacker community? Thank you all for joining us. Welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. My name is Scott Barker, Head of Partnerships at Sales Hacker. We've got a great topic to chat about today. And the topic is 4 proven strategies for inside sales teams to win more deals. Now, before I introduce my guest, I wanted to take care of a few housekeeping matters. So number 1, we will be recording this session. It'll be available afterwards in case you need to jump off or you want to share it out with a colleague or something. Number 2, as you may know, we love our webinars to be interactive. So with this in mind, please feel free to go to the chat feature, introduce yourself, name, title, company, size of your sales team, and yeah, our panelists want to hear from you. I want to hear from you, so please ask questions as we go through the webinar. For this webinar in particular, we will be having a little Q&A session at the end, so be patient and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Now that we have that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our awesome guest presenter. I'm joined by Jaclyn Klein, the co-founder and head of product at Growlabs, B2B lead generation and outbound sales automation platform. Jaclyn, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey Scott, thanks for having me, and hey everyone that's listening today. Super excited to go through these slides with you guys.
Likewise, we're super lucky to have you. So Jaclyn, we actually recently had a blog post on Sales Hacker about Growlabs and how you guys were able to go from 0 to 2.5 million in ARR in 6 months. So that's virtually right. Overnight. That's pretty impressive.
It's been a roller coaster for sure over here.
I can imagine. And then you personally, so you have several years of experience managing outbound strategies at early stage startups. And now you use that knowledge of sales combined with your passion for product to design solutions for sales teams. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. And that's a perfect segue into the slide where I am able to just chat about how I got to where I am today. But yeah, essentially I used to have high growth roles at different startups and then eventually transitioned into a more product focused role and was able to start this company Growlabs, where we focus on outbound sales automation and lead generation. So solving problems that I've certainly felt myself in the past.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, I guess this would be a great point to get started here. So yeah, just a little bit more context about where I've worked in the past. So I've worked at a startup called Universe, which is an event ticketing platform that was eventually purchased by Ticketmaster Live Nation in 2015. I was the first employee there and worked on a lot of our biz dev strategies and outbound sales at scale. And at that point, we were actually duct taping a lot of different products together to make our sales process work and as efficiently as possible. And that's where a lot of the core learnings took place that we were able to apply to Growlabs today. And I like to say that we essentially took a process that worked really well for us and we turned it into a product. So yeah.
Awesome. So the knowledge that we're going through, it's coming from the front lines or the trenches, so to speak. You've been there, done that.
Yes, definitely. All right. So we are today going to go through 4 different strategies in your sales process. The first one's going to be prospecting. We're going to talk about different ways to segment your markets, how to identify your ideal customer profiles, and find decision makers for each of those profiles. Then we're going to talk about the warming up of the leads using a few different strategies such as multi-channel campaigns and triggers. And then we're going to talk about that initial contact that we have with our leads. So a needs assessment, the demo, and different materials that are really useful for this stage. And then we're going to talk about the closing, which is also highly, highly important. And we're going to be talking about managing objections and the negotiation stage and tools that are really useful during that.
Awesome.
So to summarize or kind of ask the why are we talking about these 4 different elements? Why should we define our sales process? So there's 3 major reasons here. So for one, it improves your efficiency up front. So having a lot of salespeople, working on a huge variety of different profiles could end up wasting a lot of time. So wasting time on low value sales activities or deals that will never close. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing part of my screen. There we go. Yeah, so having a great process will help you focus on the impactful activities and help you recognize those high value leads earlier on.
Makes sense. Yeah, as sales professionals, I feel like having a grasp on your efficiency is getting more and more imperative, you know, in the complex world that we live in, you know, between juggling different tech tools, jumping between different channels with an omni-channel approach. Our attention seems to get pulled in so many different directions. And you're saying, you know, that having a well-defined process that you can fall back on can keep you laser focused and efficient.
Absolutely. Defining this process up front would definitely help you work with these tools and channels. So if you're able to say, these are the channels and tools we want to use, that gives you the opportunity to set them up and organize it in a way that's going to make it easier for you to juggle all of those from the get-go. So allow you to know how you're going to be using the tools, know how the tools are going to be working together, and potentially adding some automation to that system so that you don't have to do everything manually, which could easily happen. And then also just knowing how and where to track those activities so that you can optimize further throughout the process rather than being really retroactive.
Makes sense.
The next key point here is that defining your sales process up front will of course help you close bigger deals. So if you have a sales process and you understand how your clients are purchasing, then you're going to be able to put in place the structure to close those bigger deals down the line. And of course, higher conversion. So understanding which steps of the process is working really well and which steps leads are getting stuck on. Those are the things you're going to want to be able to pay attention to so that you can improve that process and end up with higher conversion rates. And of course, yes, higher conversion rate means increased sales.
Totally. And I think every salesperson on the planet, you know, whether you're a seasoned VP, a mid-market AE, sales ops, brand new BDR, whatever it is, you know, those three topics that we just went through have to be at the forefront of your mind all day. How do I make myself more efficient? How can I close bigger deals? And how can I improve my conversion? So definitely got my attention. Excited to see how you optimize your sales process.
Absolutely. All right, so the first big piece of this process is prospecting. So how do we find these people? Who are we going to be talking to? So that's obviously a very simple question, but it's actually quite daunting and sometimes surprisingly overlooked by certain sales organizations. So being able to segment your market is something that should be done from the very beginning. Knowing who your ideal customer profiles are. So how do you identify those in the first place? I think the biggest question that organizations need to ask themselves is, what problem are we solving as an organization, and who is having those problems? And if you can't answer that, then you need to rewind a little bit and figure out the answers to those, because those are basically the meat and bones of how you're going to be segmenting and who you're going to be selling to. So this is a list of the audiences, or what we call microsegments at Growlabs, or it's an example of some of them. So what we've noticed is the more granular you can get, the better results you're going to have, the better conversions you're going to have. Why is that? Because if you have very niche targets who have very identifiable attributes, for example, the size of the company that you're targeting, or the industry that they're in, or the amount of funding that they've raised. There are other things as well that can be taken into account, such as the different types of technologies that they use. For example, one of your microsegments could be just based on companies that have that use Stripe, and that could be part of your messaging to them because you have something that integrates really well with Stripe, so you're going to reach out to them with that specific messaging, like, oh, you know, we work with a lot of clients who use Stripe, and we're able to help them do A, B, C. And then another way to expand from there in terms of microsegments is once you see that this audience that uses Stripe is working really well, you can create what we call lookalike audiences. So trying to find similar attributes. So if someone who uses Stripe, it's working well. Perhaps there's other, payment processor technologies to look at and create segments based on those and have specific campaigns and messaging for those audiences. So that's kind of what a microsegment is. There's a lot of other benefits as well to having these microsegments. So for one, it increases conversion because it allows you to speak that language and that specific jargon to your customers. So knowing exactly who they are and what they'd be interested in, the language you're using will resonate more with them in however you're reaching out. Improve financial efficiency because by understanding the value that you bring to each client segment, you can then charge for things that they really care about. So if you know what problem you're solving, they're going to be much more willing to pay for the solution. Snowball effect. So another benefit is that if you are working within a small segment and succeeding at getting clients in that specific segment, that's potentially going to cause a word of mouth snowball effect. So people within that industry may now start recognizing your business or your product because there are similar companies using it. And finally, that would actually help you improve your product over time. So if you're working within these different microsegments and have done a really good job at identifying them, the more you speak with them, the more you're going to understand their needs and pain points, and it will help you refine your offering to them over time. So just to summarize, basically really understanding who your target market is going to set every other step up in your process up for success. The more granular, the more targeted, the more personalized you can get, the better in terms of conversion, and it has a lot of benefits. So this is definitely the first step that every sales team should be taking, and I think that the number of microsegments that you can have can be anything between like 2 to 5 to like 20 or 50. Like it really depends how big your addressable market is and then how many different little categories that you can fit them into. And that would help you have a more segmented approach.
Got it. Some great points there too. I love the segmenting off of technology. I think when a lot of organizations think of segmentation, they don't put that into the mix. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it can be a really, really effective attribute that you're using as a criteria because it just really resonates. It makes it feel so much more tailored, and oftentimes, products that can integrate with other products or benefit from other products that a customer is using, that's just a more convincing sale, basically.
Totally.
All right. So next we have, so here's basically the next step in your prospecting. So once you've identified, here's my ideal customer profiles, then you're going to want to actually find the right people to speak with, right? So first of all, you want to look at the attributes of at the company level, and then you're going to look at the attributes at a contact level. So at a company level, what does a company look like that we're going to be speaking with? Where are they located? What industries are they in? What's the company size? What's funding if it's relevant? And the technology. So this is just a quick screenshot from the Growlabs platform where people run searches through our database to find those decision makers at the companies and that they're looking to target. But this would be an example of things that you would want to break down for a search at the company level. So that's defining and helping you find the companies, and then helping you find the contacts. So using your criteria, this is a really simple one, but it can get way more advanced. So you want to look at where the contact is based probably, because if your team is split out into different geographies or territories, so you're able to identify, okay, here's the contacts in this territory versus the other one. And then based on job titles, another thing to consider is that you may have different campaigns and different messaging for different roles. So some of your product may be really attractive to people who are in HR or people operations, and then another piece of your product could be really attractive to someone who is in the law department of a company, or someone who is head of sales operations. So there's so many different segments just based on job title as well. And of course, messaging for specific job titles would be very unique so that it basically appeals to them. At Growlabs, we definitely have a few audiences based on different jobs and roles and job functions.
Got it.
Other things you can look at a contact level aside from location and job title. Sometimes you may want to look at specific skills that they have. So sometimes people will list specific skills on LinkedIn, like, oh, I'm a Ruby on Rails developer or whatnot, and potentially what you're selling is closely related to that. So that could be something that you pay attention to as well.
Makes sense. So using relevant language based upon skills and title. I like it. So here's a question I always ask whenever ICP is brought up. And the question is, how often should I be reviewing my ideal customer profile to make sure that it's still relevant? Because it's not a static thing, right?
Exactly. So of course, the more often that you can review it and refine it, the better. It definitely should be a dynamic piece of your process. It definitely is not static. But you do need enough time to get the data for each of these ICPs. So for example, maybe you want to revise them or review them every quarter. So maybe allowing 3 months of reaching out and figuring out how these ideal customer profiles are performing in order to assess those. And then also there's other things to consider aside from just how they're performing. So you want to look at how the market is changing, how the competition or the competitive landscape is changing. These things may have an impact on who you're targeting and the different niches that you're focused on. And so yeah, basically the suggestion I would say is having it as a quarterly practice.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would agree for sure. Don't be too, I think that's a great point. Don't be too quick to move on as well. You need to actually give it a solid shot. If you've made the hypothesis that this is your ICP, you got to stick it through and at least gather enough data to prove yourself right or wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, so I don't know, sometimes a month is definitely not enough. So yeah, 3 months I think is a good base.
Awesome.
Okay. So now we are going to talk about warming up our leads. So what are the different ways in which we are going to be able to get in contact with them, get their attention, get them on the phone or get them in a demo. There are so many different ways now that people are being contacted. You know, we have so many different devices. We're on so many different platforms every day. We're on email. Some people are using phone. Some people are on social media. So it's definitely part of the process to really consider how you're going to be approaching these new prospects that you've found. And ideally, when you're finding your prospects and you're doing your searches, you're able to, in one go, be able to identify like who they are, what their job title is, and ideally get their email address as well without having to do too much manual research. So there is a lot of software out there now, luckily, that does help with this. Growlabs is definitely one of them, but there are so many ways now, which makes the SDR's life so much easier and less manual data input.
And thank goodness for that.
Thank goodness for that.
No one likes data input.
That's right. All right, so there are obviously a lot of channels that can be used as discussed. And I think what's become interesting lately is for a long time, multi-channel or omni-channel marketing, it's been a valuable B2C strategy for retail businesses for quite a few years now. And so the idea of serving like multi-channel touch points to people who are looking to buy from your website or whatever, that has been an ongoing thing. But I think multi-channel has not really been applied to sales yet or to a B2B approach. And I think it's just starting to happen more and more, which I think is really awesome. And I think a lot more sales teams will start taking advantage of this approach. But it can be highly effective and increase conversion rates. So basically, we have email, we have forms, we have MailChimp and marketing emails and all these different ad platforms. And I think coming up with a system that actually allows you to integrate all of them into a smart campaign is potentially highly effective. So you're having touch points with the same lead potentially through different channels, but simultaneously. So around the same period of time, you're going to be potentially sending someone an email, and then potentially they also see an ad about your offering or your business. Potentially they also have recently downloaded a white paper or PDF about you through a LinkedIn ad, and also then you got a phone call, and when they get a phone call, they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of you. And that's probably because you have taken the time to build that recognition or familiarity through all these multiple channels, which helps warm them up to the idea of hearing more about you or speaking with you, because you're not just this unknown thing that they've never heard of before.
I like that. And it's all working in unison, right? You don't do an ad campaign one month and then do an outbound email campaign another one. It all has to be working in the same time period so you stay relevant and top of mind.
That's exactly right.
Awesome.
So with all those channels working together, super effective, I like to focus on outbound email campaigns. This has been the #1 channel for us at Growlabs, and as Scott mentioned earlier, we have grown very, very quickly in a very short period of time, and 65% of that has come from us doing outbound email automation. Wow. To us, this is a highly, highly successful channel. It has by far the best ROI for us, and for a lot of our clients as well, and I think it is something that if you've never done before is definitely worth looking into, because it is an extremely efficient channel and scalable, like highly scalable channel. So for each microsegment, when you're doing an email campaign, as mentioned earlier, having that messaging be more personalized is extremely crucial and helps drive better conversion rates. So when you have, for each microsegment, you're going to want to draft a series of outbound emails. I have a slide coming up where I'm going to show you kind of what the structure of an email sequence should look like. So from email 1, where you're introducing yourself and all the follow-ups that come after that. You can do other things like A/B testing the timing of each email, and then also A/B testing the content of each email when you're doing campaigns like this. Highly recommended, though, if you're doing an A/B test, that you should test not more than 1 or 2 variables when you're doing this. So, for example, if you're doing an A/B test on 2 different emails for the same touch point within a campaign, make sure you're testing like just the subject line or just the opening line in your email, the body of your email. Otherwise, you're not going to really know what is causing one email to do better than the other. So in the future, you're not necessarily going to know what can be used for optimization. Of course, you can choose, okay, clearly like email A is a winner and email B is not, so let's just use email A. To me, though, I would like to know why, and because that will help you in the future. And if you don't know why, then it's kind of a one-off success, but a Band-Aid solution, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because cool. I'm assuming a large portion of our audience and listeners do have some sort of outbound email strategy going on right now, but sometimes they fall flat, sometimes they're awesome. And I know you've done a ton of A/B testing with emails. So from your experience at Growlabs, what is or what was your top performing email subject line for cold outreach?
So what I can tell you are the specific attributes of the best performing subject lines. I won't say the exact subject line copy, but I can tell you the lessons that we have learned. So for one, the shorter the better.
Yeah.
When you use merge tags in the subject line, which I don't think a ton of people do in one-to-one emails. So when you're using automation, of course, being able to say the person's company name in the subject line shows that you know who you're sending a message to, like, oh, this email is for me because I work at this company, versus like the same subject line for everyone. So having it personalized and customized. Don't say things that are too deceiving in your subject line, like things that come across as clickbait or just like really big statements like the best thing for this ever. Like, bragging too much, I guess, in a subject line just doesn't work very well. It sounds disingenuous, and it just doesn't come across as human at all. And keeping it super simple and relevant. So just really straightforward, really conversational, and casual. I like to use the word casual because, making it sound too businessy is, to me, closely related to the whole clickbait thing. Or just, to me, I would probably compartmentalize something like that as a someone clearly selling to me. It's just the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to compartmentalize it into the category of, they obviously want money from me and I don't have time for this. So keeping it.
And then we all go into that shutdown mode. Exactly. I don't want to be sold to.
Yeah, and to be honest, as a co-founder of a startup, I get so many emails like this, and there are only a select few that actually get my attention, and usually they're ones that sound super conversational or casual or like clearly personalized. Otherwise, it's just, especially because I work at a company that focuses on this specific thing. My filter is very, very strong, so not much gets past it.
I can imagine. Those are all great points. So just to summarize some of the things you said there. So keep it short. Add dynamic tags if you can. No blanket statements. No bragging. Keep it relevant and keep it casual.
Exactly.
I like it. Awesome. And then I'm going to do it one more time. In your opinion, what is the best time of day to send email? There's a lot of talk on this. Everyone's got an opinion. What is your experience?
Yeah, so I take a slightly different approach to this. I know right now, for the past few years, there's been a lot of discussion around this. You can find articles about it easily online. But a lot of these articles are focused, I think, on marketing. So I have a two-pronged answer for this. First is that I think marketing and sales emails are very, very different. And the discussion that you see typically around best time to send an email is highly focused around marketing emails. And that is because the timing for marketing emails is far more crucial because you only really get one chance once the person opens your email, right? So, and just to clarify the difference between a marketing and a sales email, a marketing email is not an email that you expect to get a response, like an actual email reply from. To me, a marketing email is, it's got content in it, it has a clear call to action, like it wants me to click to buy something or download something or sign up for something or to, it's trying to pull me back to something. But it's never a person who's emailing me and waiting for me to actually reply to them. Versus sales email, that's just a one-to-one direct, like plain text email. So with a marketing email, you really sometimes only have that one shot. Like this person needs to be in a situation where they're going to A, open the email, and then B, have the time or be willing to read it and click or do the action that I anticipate or hope for. Whereas a sales email, you're going to open it potentially for the first time, realize that the person on the other side has said something that does interest you, you do want to get back to them. Potentially you're busy right now, so you're going to mark it as unread, and you're going to, or like push it to the top of your inbox for tomorrow, like using Boomerang or something. So you may still reply, you just don't want to reply right now. So that's, to me, a huge difference between marketing and sales emails regarding timing. Another thing is when you're doing a sales email approach, I think it really depends on the role that you are sending emails to. So when you have your microsegments, you know the job titles of the people that you're reaching out to. So if you have a sales rep that you're reaching out to, you know that they're probably really busy in the morning because they're already on a bunch of calls and demos, and maybe they are more likely to spend time sifting through their inbox after lunch or like later in the afternoon when they're not as jam-packed in their schedule. Another example would be a real estate agent works on the weekends, so maybe it makes sense to email them on the weekend. So to me, those things are more important when you're thinking about best time to send. It shouldn't be a blanket answer. It should be depending on who you're reaching out to. And then you can A/B test the timing. So once you have a strategy for each of your audiences, then you can A/B test the timing for those specific audiences and see what works best for them.
Love it. Great points again. Thanks for diving into that for me. I know I took us a bit offline there, but that was awesome. Thank you.
No worries. Cool. So this slide is about your email sequence. So an outbound email sequence could contain anywhere from 6 to 8 emails. So in the past, I think people have typically given up after, the second email. Okay, I've sent them 2 emails. They clearly don't want to hear from me, or they're not going to reply. They're not interested. That's all. Move on to the next person. But really, on average, it can take up to the 6th email to get a response from a cold lead. So definitely don't give up after the second. And using email automation and having a sequence definitely helps, it creates that persistence for you, even though you may not be actively persistent every single day for every single lead. They think you are being that way. So that's great. And sometimes people get replies through our system like, oh, I really appreciate your persistence. And then it's funny because it's like, well, actually, this is the first time that I'm actually aware of you. And that always surprises the person on the other end, but it actually works really, really well.
Nice.
And in terms of content for these emails and the timing, so this is an example of what we follow and what we would suggest or recommend to our clients. But basically, your first email of a sequence is going to introduce yourself and build a little bit of credibility. And there is usually a call to action to set up a call or maybe do a demo. And then you see that there are pauses in between the following emails after that. And there are different ways and reasons that you can send follow-ups. So, the first follow-up can just be general, and then other follow-ups could also include, you can come up with reasons like, oh, I wanted to send you this case study, or we were recently in this article, or I saw that you were recently in an article. So there's so many different reasons and triggers that you can use to follow up with your prospects. And then your final email, maybe email 8, you let them know that you're not going to be sending more, and sometimes it actually works super well because you're like, oh yeah, shoot, I've been meaning to reply to this person, I just haven't had time, and this is probably my last chance to do that, so I guess I'll just reply now and see how it goes. So that could also happen. So yeah, that's just an example or a framework of how you can run a sequence.
That's great, and we will be sharing this deck out for everyone so you guys can copy this one down. That's great.
We will. Yeah. All right. A few outbound email tips. So the content of these emails, like I said, marketing emails and sales emails are very, very different tools, and they are written very differently. So an outbound email one-to-one for sales would be, highly personal, plain text. You're just shooting someone an email. But make sure you make it feel like each email was manually crafted for them by the person that's sending it. So there's some personalization involved there using merge tags, which could involve obviously their name, but then also their company name. And if you're using audiences and doing segmented campaigns, then you're able to say things in that email template that are personal or tailored, so you're able to talk more specifically about the technology that is being used, or by the industry that they're in, or perhaps they raised a round of funding. So just keeping that email template with merge tags as personal as you can. Keeping them short, the less words you use to get your email point across, the better. Keeping them simple, avoid jargon too much unless they're, sometimes when you're in the same industry as them, it's a little bit easier to use jargon because you can assume that they probably speak the same language as you, but it doesn't always work super well. It just doesn't sound as human or relatable. Using FOMO, so making your offering sound exclusive, intriguing, or some sort of time-based situation. Building credibility, so as I mentioned for subject lines, don't say big statements like, oh, we're the best company, blah, blah. Instead, using relevant data points like people that you're working with already, so clients in the same space, or using case studies as well to prove why you're the best, but not necessarily saying that you're the best. And using your own voice and style. So don't just copy and paste templates. you want to sound more genuine and on brand and sound like yourself. Sound like a human being, don't sound like a robot. I think that's a good guideline.
Yeah, those are great. And I would add one to the use your own voice. I kind of have a rule of thumb that there's more than 2 buzzwords in an email, then you should probably rewrite it and use some more common language, or understand the point you're trying to get across, rather than just throwing in some buzzwords.
Yeah, and I know that there are some really cool tools that you can use for your inbox. A lot of Chrome extensions out there. Some of them will tell you, like Grammarly is obviously a great one. You want to send things with good grammar in it, but there are tools that will say, okay, you're using your message is becoming a little bit too complicated, and your chances for a response rate are decreasing. So you should, it will tell you how to refine it and make it more simple and relatable.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now that we've talked about email, let's quickly talk about ads. So in terms of that multi-channel approach that I discussed in an earlier slide, utilizing systems out there like Zapier, for example, I think can be hugely powerful. So Zapier, just for anyone who doesn't know, is a system that allows you to connect a bunch of different tools together. So tools that don't come out of the box already integrated with other tools, Zapier allows you to bring them together and work together. So you're able to then, for one app that I'm using, if this happens in this app, then I want this thing to happen in the other app. So being able to set up basically what they call triggers and actions. So one really cool one that we started using last year now, because it's 2018, but basically when you have new people or new leads that you're starting to email, you can set up a trigger through Zapier that then pushes those email addresses into AdRoll, and then AdRoll will be able to retarget them with ads around the same time that you're sending them emails. So that's a really, really powerful one. And we have done a lot of testing with this and have found that the leads that are also getting ads have been showing slightly higher conversion rates. So that's super interesting. And we're continuing to stay on top of that one because we think that it has a lot of potential. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've all been on, Facebook and just thought of something and then it pops up on your feed. It can definitely be a little eerie, but also super convenient, right? So this is kind of the same idea. It's about staying top of mind, right?
Exactly. And one thing that's interesting about that as well is B2B ads actually, I think, I was told this by AdRoll specifically, but for B2B ads, it has pretty low conversion rates for Facebook. But outside of that, I think this works super well. So, for example, if you're e-commerce and people are looking at products on your website that they may buy and then they don't, and then they come back on Facebook and then those products are there, I think that's a really good use case for Facebook retargeting. But when it comes to like big B2B things that, a big software that your company may be looking into, seeing that on Facebook isn't necessarily going to get them to click through and then it's not really about a call to action in that case. And so for e-commerce, getting ads is about a call to action. For B2B, it's more about just keeping the familiarity up. That's correct. But so it's when you do that, just don't expect like the click-through rate or conversions to be super high on the ads themselves. Just know that they are helping with the bigger picture of keeping up the familiarity with your brand.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. This is just a quick screenshot to show you from AdRoll. So AdRoll recently, last year, released this new feature, this new type of audience, which is called a CRM audience, which is, I kind of, in a little pink rectangle, highlighted where it says CRM, type CRM. And essentially, that allows you to upload a list of contacts and email addresses either from your CRM or you have a CSV, and from there is able to find the matches of those email addresses among their ads network, and was able to then push those ads to people just based on their email addresses. And that's across like a bunch of different devices and websites and networks as well, but it's just, it is new and it is super powerful, and I think people should I highly recommend looking into it basically as something, as a new experiment.
I could see that being super powerful.
Mm-hmm. It definitely has been so far. Oh, and also for the note on customized creative. So if you were to segment your list, so you say, this ideal customer profile or microsegment, I'm gonna put that CSV as a specific audience versus another one. The ads that you're pushing to them could also be customized to that audience. So like just with the outbound email campaigns having super specific messaging for the specific audiences, you can actually do the same thing here with the different ad campaigns.
Cool, very cool.
Another cool thing that you can do with triggers in Zapier is to set up things to happen based on engagement level. So one really awesome one that we like to use is if a lead opens your email at least once they've opened your emails 5 times, so they've reached that threshold of they've opened your email, a lot of times that's telling you that they are probably highly interested. Then you can get a Slack notification, so a message in Slack that says, hey, this person is highly engaged, like this would be a good time to give them a call. So having these really specific cues based on engagement would help that next touch point it helps you use the next touch point at the best time possible. So when they have reached the point of high interest, then it would be a good time to follow up with them. And this is a good way of being able to do that.
Very cool. So this would be almost like a form of, lead scoring with an alert kind of baked in.
Exactly. Very
cool.
So you get them, it's really timely that way.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And yeah, I know there's, whichever, CRM our audience is using or anything, typically there's, some lead scoring functionality built in. So there's a few different ways you could set that up. I think that's awesome.
Exactly. All right, so we're going to talk about that initial contact. So once your prospect has replied to you or shown interest through whatever channel that you are reaching them at, we're going to need to talk about that needs assessment, the demo, and then the materials that go along with that initial contact. So the number one way to close a deal, from our experience, and probably from a lot of yours as well, is listen. It is so important to listen to your prospect. So how many times do you do a demo and you think it goes really well, and then afterwards they kind of just go dark on you? And let's explore possible reasons why that might happen. So here's just a quick story. And this story has happened more than once, but it has happened recently. But basically, we jump on a call for a product that we believed could help our team's efficiency. We were really interested. I did my research. I was pretty convinced that this tool was going to work for us. We were really interested in it. And then got on the call. The first thing that happened on the call is that the rep just started to explain their product and how it worked and jumped right into a demo. And yes, I was impressed with all the functionalities that they had, and it seemed like a very powerful tool. However, after we hung up, I pretty much lost interest, didn't feel as excited about it anymore, was not convinced. Why is that? Well, because I wanted an easy solution to solve a specific pain point. And if this ties back to one of the earlier things I said about when you are identifying your ideal customer profiles, you need to be able to answer that hypothesis question: what problem are we solving, and who has this problem? And then you can break that down into smaller, more niche problems. Like, this is the main problem, but this person has it in this specific way versus that specific way. So when you speak to somebody on the phone or doing a demo, they usually know what problem they're having, or if they don't, you can help them figure that out. And then once that's defined, then you're able to show them how you're going to solve that. And that's what I wanted out of that conversation. I just wanted to know, how are they going to solve this problem that we're having? And it should be easy and straightforward. But instead I got told about all these different features, and they're selling me on a wide range of functionality. And that, to me, lost my focus and lost that direct answer. Like, okay, here's what I want to solve, and I need this solution. And they did not directly address that on the call. So therefore, I I just lost focus and I lost interest because they clearly have a lot of stuff that we may or may not need, and they didn't simplify how I would be able to use the product or benefit from it. So the big lesson here is, you know, when the number of irrelevant features is high in your pitch, the likelihood of that deal to close is reduced. So being able to really hone in on and focus on the parts of your offering that are going to help that specific prospect, the better that call is going to go, the more interested that prospect is going to be, the higher conversion rates you're going to have.
Definitely. Yeah, and in sales, I think we see a variation of that story over and over again. And the sad thing is, unfortunately, that sales rep probably added you to his pipeline, without properly qualifying. He's going through pipeline review with the sales manager. He's forecasted it. And, at the end of the day, you're not going to buy the product. And I've definitely been on both sides of the coin, right?
Yeah.
I've been in that where I'm trying to buy a piece of software to do X, and the rep is talking about X, Y, Z version 2, Z version 3. And then I've also been the sales rep that, I think you just get so caught up on wanting to make sure that this person knows how amazing your tech or service or product is that you start down the path of, irrelevant features.
Yeah.
So do you have any good tips or tricks, being on the buyer end so frequently for sales reps to keep themselves relevant to the prospect? Does it just come down to listening?
Yeah, and to add to that, I'm also often shadowing the sales reps calls here at Growlabs too. And yeah, the number one thing is just never skip discovery. Never go past the section of the call where you are able to learn more about your prospect and their business. So you need to absolutely spend that time at the beginning to understand how their team is structured. What are they currently using for this? Do they have any current pain points? And from there, you're going to be able to tailor the rest of your pitch in so much more. And really everything you're going to be saying is to help them understand how to use your product in a specific way. So again, by understanding the pain points first, you can become a trusted advisor. And then using those insights that you learned during the discovery, you can then customize the rest of your pitch. And if you don't have a lot of time, like it's going to be a really short call and you're worried that you won't be able to dig super deep, at least get some surface, like a little bit higher level answers. And of course, you can do if you know it's going to be short, do as much research as possible before you speak to the prospect. So try and figure out on LinkedIn, like, oh, how many employees do they have, or how big is this team? You can use tools to figure out what technologies they're already using, stuff like that. That would help you tailor the pitch a little bit more once you actually get on the phone.
Love it.
3 key factors for a successful pitch. Again, so the value-based selling. So what is the problem they have and how can you bring value with the problem that you're solving? Building credibility. So you're able to talk about, oh yeah, we work with these companies in your space. So they're able to say like, oh, hey, they already work with some of our competitors. So that also creates a little bit of FOMO. And then a sense of urgency. So somehow tying a window of time into your sales call where you would like to, just establishing that up front with your prospect helps you close a deal faster. Having the right material. So after you finish a call, follow-ups or next steps after a call can sometimes be tricky. So being able to add some value after the call or like some actual tangible items really help. It will help your prospect share more information with the rest of their team, sending them a deck. So that would be like the one-pager. The one-pager they can easily show their boss or their colleagues. The deck for like some more in-depth information about the product. So maybe that is the point where you get more in-depth about the feature sets rather than on the demo itself. Case studies to build that credibility, and potentially, any product videos if they were wondering how specific things work, or to show like the simplicity of getting started. Sometimes that is a good selling point because everybody likes to save time. If things are fast to get set up, that takes away some friction in terms of adopting a new product. And then jumping into closing. So closing can tend to have a lot of back and forth between the prospect and the sales rep or the account executive. And sometimes that back and forth could lead to just drop off. You know, it's too many steps, it's too much friction. I've kind of become frustrated and I don't really, you know, I don't have the time for this anymore and it's not super urgent, so maybe I'll get to it later. And then you end up having to follow up a bunch more times before you end up getting this deal closed. So having a really efficient way to send those proposals and also get signatures and payments and capture all of that up front. So for example, a system like PandaDoc or any e-signature proposals software that integrates closely with your CRM and has good tracking and analytics would be a useful tool, because it allows the reps to quickly, you know, configure the proposal, input the data that's necessary for that specific contract, and then also have the ability for them to sign the contract, for them to put in payment details, and for them to also put in like counter pricing, or actually the negotiation process can happen directly within the contract itself. So that saves a lot of manual work up front. And then last but not least, this is a really useful tool. I think having this, what we call an ROI calculator. So showing this on a demo can actually be highly effective, especially towards the end once you've already discussed all of the benefits and how it might work for your prospect. A lot of the times the question ends up being, okay, you know, this seems really great. We talked about pricing, but you know, now I'm gonna have to talk with my team and see if it's worth it or whatever. And this could potentially help you prove the ROI up front or show them what they can potentially expect in terms of results. And to add to that, if they're able to actually see these results in the first couple of months of using your product, then they're just going to use this as potentially a predictable revenue model and say, okay, well, you're able to show me this result in a short period of time. If I then extend this for 6 more months, I can expect this type of revenue. So this can actually be a super useful and convincing tool on a sales call, and then also when you're trying to get renewals as well.
That's great. Yeah, super helpful. And I think, you know, when you provide an ROI calculator, it's just giving your champion ammo to go and then internally sell it easier, you know.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
That wraps up the slides that I have. I think we have about 8 more minutes left, so we can definitely run through some Q&A from our viewers.
Yeah, let's do it. Awesome. Well, that was great. So thank you so much, Jacqueline. That was excellent. And we do have some questions. We will try and get to as many as possible. I like this one from Jeff. So this is going back to when we were talking about ideal customer profile. And Jeff wants to know, how does this apply to early stage companies who are still looking into product market fit and where their ICP is not quite as clear yet?
Got it. So really early stage companies, I think there are a few different places to look to get these early hypotheses. So number one, if it's super early, would be the founders of the company. So usually when you start a company, there's a problem that you're looking to solve, right? So what is the problem and who are you solving it for? If you can't answer that question when you're starting a company or designing a product from scratch, that's definitely, you know, then you're kind of running around in the dark a little bit. So ideally, this has already been, you know, there's already a hypothesis in place, right? So, as you know, as a product designer, I can't really design a product unless I know who's going to be using it and like what are the different scenarios that they're going to be using it in. Like, what is the goal that our users are going to have? What's the job that they need to get done with this product or with this business or tool? And usually there's at least one persona that your company is built around. So, and sometimes there's more than one persona, which is great, but that persona is a really good starting point. What is our, why do we have a business? What is the business solving? Who is it solving it for? And are there more than one, is there more than one persona that I can look at and then take that and translate it into like an actual person or decision maker at a specific company? Does that make sense?
Definitely agree. Yeah, no, totally. And I think you hit it on the head there. It's just about, doing your best to, use empathy to, put yourself in the shoes of whoever you think may be your ICP, and, understanding their pains, their challenges, their day-to-day.
Yes.
And then it's, it's kind of a hypothesis. You see, you test it, and then it can mature and evolve as you go. That's great.
Yeah. And I mean, this is also used heavily for design, but user research. So, I mean, when you're building a product from scratch, or even you have a product already and you want to continue to improve it or learn more about it, or learn more about how to make it the best possible solution, you talk to people who you're solving the problem for first. So I would talk to different people on different sales teams, companies of different size, and have a specific set of questions for them, and just understanding, it's basically like the discovery portion of a sales call. Like if you're able to have that discovery discussion with a few people that you have your hypothesis based on up front, then that may help you shape your strategy from there.
That's a great way to look at it, as the discovery call of your business or your startup is the pre kind of research and interviews. That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we answered your question there, Jeff. Moving on to Andy Carter. So, question from Andy is: during a lengthy sales process, how can you keep clients engaged after a proposal has been sent and when it's not closed yet? So you've had the demo, everything's great. You set the proposal, and now you're just waiting. How can you keep them engaged?
So I think one good thing to set up before this happens is when you're doing that call or the demo, or before you're sending that proposal, is trying to identify upfront the timeline that you can expect to work within. So when are they hoping to decide when to move forward, or when are they looking to adopt a tool like this? Sometimes they'll let you know up front, like, oh, we're looking to start using something like this probably next quarter, or like in the next 3 months, or within this month, or within the next 2 weeks. So try and gather that information first, so that way, they've made some sort of they've set a verbal expectation for you, and then if it exceeds the expectation that you discussed, then you have the first reason to follow up is, can you send me, how's the decision-making process going? I've noticed that it's, we discussed this timing. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you push this forward. Maybe you can offer, if you need anything from me, let me know. There's a few different reasons why you may want to ping that person and just see how are things going? What's the status? And then maybe even sending, chances are there's a reason why that they haven't gotten back to you, and I don't see why they wouldn't maybe let you know that reason. And then from there, I think it's totally dependent on the situation about why that is. But yeah, trying to keep them engaged, I think, is around timing, and then when it exceeds that timing, definitely be following up and inquiring about, how are things going, what is the status, and is there anything that you guys can provide to make it easier. That would be, I think, the most common example.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd mirror the exact same answer. It's just about setting up the timelines. If they tell you, I want this in 2 months, well, then just work backwards from that timeline and be like, okay, if we're going to implement in 2 months, at 4 weeks, we need to bring in your C-level. At 5 weeks, we need to be at procurement, and just have that timelined out so that you're never playing the waiting game. You kind of know the next steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and we may have time for one more question quickly. Okay, Mark Bello wants to know, what was the tool to segment your prospects at the beginning of the webinar?
Oh, that was Growlabs, actually.
There you go.
Eating our own dog food, definitely.
Awesome. Well, that's a good kind of quick segue before we wrap this up. Jacqueline, do you want to do just a super quick intro into how kind of Growlabs helps sales professionals if other people are interested?
Definitely. So Growlabs is a company that helps other companies grow. We help you with sales efficiency and scaling up growth. And we do that by combining lead generation with outbound sales automation. So the lead generation portion, we have a database of over 300 million verified leads. So our clients can come into our platform, run searches based on all the different criteria that we mentioned earlier, and then they actually get the results of the decision makers along with their contact information, who they can then engage through outbound email campaigns directly in Growlabs. So for the outbound portion, you can go in and create email sequences. Our tool is designed to help you with segmentation. So it allows you to have your different audiences with your different leads that fit your different ideal customer profiles. And then you have your different segments of outbound email campaigns with messaging specific for those different segments, and allows you to then combine those and then watch those replies come through.
Awesome. And I know we didn't get to everyone's question, so thanks Rashida, Buzz, Tom, Michael, Trey, Jeff, and more and more. If you do have any questions, feel free to shoot them over to Jacqueline at growlabs.com. She'll be happy to answer them for you, but that is our time. Thank you again, Jacqueline, for your time, your insight. That was really enjoyable.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. And yeah, Scott mentioned, definitely feel free to send me an email if you have any questions. And the webinar will be available afterwards as a recorded version.
Absolutely. And to everyone who joined us today, I know we went a little bit long, but thanks for your time and attendance and the great engagement throughout. Good luck ramping up the new year.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.